Hello everyone, my name is Clay, and welcome to Terminally Nerdy's Indie Impressions, the show where I take a look at independent, non-AAA, and niche titles, giving you my quick first impressions after at least 2 hours of gameplay, because if that's good enough for most of the major retailer refund policies, well, it's good enough for me. And we've got kind of a special one today. Today we're going to be talking about Spearhead Games' technically third game, but only the second of theirs that I've ever played, Omensight. And to kind of explain what makes this game special, I need to explain my kind of new process. So, starting with Omensight and technically Devious Dungeon, what I've been doing now is I stream the games that I'm going to do for this show on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Terminally Nerdy. I'm doing it on Saturday afternoons, usually starting around 12 p.m. Eastern. When I picked up Omensight and started streaming it, my intention was to go for about 3 hours. That's usually what I stream for. By about the 3 to 3.5 hour mark, I'm pretty tired. However, I went for 6.5 with Omensight because the game grabbed me and wouldn't let go. And it had grabbed the people who were watching, and it didn't let go. Because this is a highly narrative-driven game that is telling the story of the last day of this world. And your goal as the Harbinger is to prevent that apocalypse. So what is Omensight? Well, it's described as an action murder mystery game, and that's really what it is. In this, you play as the Harbinger, a divine being sent to the world on the eve of its destruction. You only ever show up if the world is facing an actual apocalyptic catastrophe. In this particular case, it is the void wurm known as Voden waking up. When Voden wakes up, he eats the world. That's it. Game over. There's nothing after this. So when you appear, you're appearing during a huge battle between two forces. The forces of Rotentia, which is like this mouse kingdom, and Pygaria, which is a mix of birds, cats, and dogs. Pygaria is kind of like just taking over everything. They're trying to build this super empire. They're led by a bird named Indrik, and he's kind of known for being a giant raging asshole in that he brings everything into submission and then he makes like a caste system. It's kind of wild. There's a lot of lore and backstory that you discover about this game. But you, as the Harbinger, have a unique appearance, and when people see you, they kind of start to recognize what you represent. Unfortunately, on the very first night you're there, the apocalypse happens, and a witch reaches out to you and says, I know how we can figure this out, and I know what's going on. See, in this world, there's a being called the Godless Priestess. In this particular case, it was an owl named Vera, and her existence is all that prevents Voden from awakening. Upon her death, her soul and her power is supposed to transfer to somebody else, so that way Voden continues to stay locked up in his cage. Unfortunately, it appears that someone not only killed Vera in cold blood, but they prevented her soul from moving, which means that Voden wakes up. Your job is to figure out who killed Vera, where they killed Vera, and where her soul is so you can free it and stop the apocalypse from ever occurring. And to do this, you have to follow the very last day of 4 distinct individuals. Those individuals are Ludimir the Bear, Radika, the leader of the Rodentian rebel forces, Draga, the general of the Pygarian forces, and Indrik himself, the Emperor. You do this by unlocking different paths. Basically, you'll start with Draga and Ludimir, and as you play through their last day, you will unlock information, clues, the ability to open seals, depending on the people. These are like secret doors, basically. And you'll also gain XP and money as you do these things. And you'll play through the days following these people over and over and over again until you unlock what's called an Omensight. There are 3 Omensights, and when you get one of the Omensights, you now have a big breakthrough. Those represent like, holy shit, this is like a big clue in the case, effectively. And from that point, the narrative changes because now you can use the Omensight power to inflict an Omensight on Draga, Ludimir, Radika, or Indrik to forcibly show them what you have found, and they will know it to be true, and it will change how they spend their day. So, when you unlock the first Omensight, all of a sudden Ludimir will change his behavior patterns, because now he's like, oh god, I know something, And I know it's true, and we need to figure it out. And this is how the game progresses. You basically play through a day, going to different locations at different times of day with different people, taking different paths to unlock information and to eventually collect these Omensights. Once you have all 3 Omensights, you will essentially have figured out the mystery, which is where I am, because now it's all about getting Voden stopped. It took me 6.5 hours to get to that point, and I loved every minute of it. Now, the actual way the game plays is kind of an action game with a light RPG mechanic. So, as you follow your companions, and you will always have a companion with you, when you get into fights, you have a light attack, a heavy attack, a jump, and a dodge, and that's it. Eventually, as you level up, which you gain XP from finding secrets and killing enemies, you will unlock a time stop ability, which basically almost completely freezes time in a radius around you. You will unlock a grab, you will unlock a dash, and you'll unlock some upgrades for those powers. One of the upgrades, however, seems bugged, and I want to mention that right here. Eventually you upgrade your grab power, which can grab enemies and objects and pull them to you almost like a Jedi. One of the upgrades is supposed to be a heal. So you grab the enemy, and as you're holding them, you're supposed to drain their life. I could never get it to work. And unfortunately, the only other way to heal in this game is to break barrels and collect fruit. That's it. It's real bad, because some of these enemies, they start getting really, really nasty as you get further in the game. The other way you upgrade your character is collecting the shards, which is basically like money. And again, you get them in the same way, breaking barrels, collecting treasure, completing days. And those you use to upgrade your armor, your health, your energy, which you build up during combat and use to pull off special moves. And what's really cool is as you upgrade your gear, like upgrade your armor and upgrade your weapon, their appearance changes. And it's really cool, and I really like it. Beyond that, that's pretty much everything there is. And what you're seeing on screen, the kind of fighting is very low level. I started a new game specifically for this because I don't want to spoil anything, because the story in this is fantastic. Multiple times during playing it on stream, me and the chat would be like, okay, I think you know, Indrix did it, and this is probably how he did it because of the Omensight that we just got, and then it turns out that is completely wrong, and it's somebody else, and it kept spiraling. And the actual, like, where I got to was, what the fuck, why is this happening? What? So, just for the record, it gets wild. Visually as well, I love the way this game looks. Spearhead Games has a very distinct art style. They kind of go with this style. Their previous game that I played and actually reviewed on my website a couple years ago, called Stories: The Path of Destiny, has a very similar art style, but this is just a way better game. Stories was okay, but at its core, it's a choose-your-own-adventure action game. And once you've gotten the good ending, you kind of don't need to play it ever again. Whereas Omensight, the journey is just phenomenal. Like, seriously, it is well worth the $20 it is on Steam. Also, the music is fantastic, and for an indie game, everything except for the memory section is voice acted. And the voice acting is pretty solid, actually. Indrik, Ludimir, Radika, and Draga all have unique voices, and they all sound fantastic for what it is. Your character never actually talks. The Harbinger doesn't even have a face, as far as I can tell. They're faceless. They are distinctly female. They have a female build, and people refer to the Harbinger as a her. But she never actually talks, and Radika actually doesn't like that. It's pretty funny when Radika gets really annoyed that you don't speak. And Radika seems to also be the only one who doesn't realize that you're the Harbinger. Everybody else knows what you are. Well, Ludimir doesn't until somebody tells him what you are.
Same, mate.
But nobody else knows what you are. Additionally, you are just basically doing a Groundhog Day, so if you don't like the idea of repeating areas over and over and seeing kind of the same 5 or 6 levels, you probably won't enjoy this. I didn't mind it because the narrative is so good, and the voice acting is so good, and the way everything is presented is so good. It was just too much fun. I didn't want to stop. And there's a good chance I'm going to sit down after I finish this review and take care of some stuff this morning after I record this. Then we'll sit down and we'll finish this fucking game. Now, one other thing, this is available on Switch for the $20 price. However, my friend and patron Nate picked it up because of my stream. He got it on Switch, and he has warned me the load times are atrocious. Also, a couple of things, other things, you can't rebind keys. So you can play with keyboard and mouse. I played with the controller. You cannot rebind keys. On the keyboard and mouse, there's multiple layout options, but you can't change what key does what. On the controller, you can change nothing. This was a problem for me, as that my controller has a X button that likes to stick, because I played way too much Dead Cells. And because of this, the basic attack in this game, the light attack, is bound to X. Which meant that sometimes I would just start swinging and not stop, and I'd have to tap the button to get it unstuck. Also, this game allows you to change difficulty mid-fight or mid-level. You just go to the options menu. There are 2 different difficulty settings. There's one for the combat and one for the investigation. I played it on normal, and for the most part I was fine. There are some sections where the combat gets really, really brutal. There are also boss fights, and one final thing, enemies scale depending on your level and your upgrades. So when you start, everything will be kind of easy. By the time you get to where I am, you'll end up with huge groups of enemies, multiple different types of enemies, shields, special powers, all sorts of crazy shit going on. It can get really frantic in a good way, but it sometimes can feel unfair, to be honest. The combat's not 100% great, it's just good. The bosses also scale, so don't be surprised if you face a particular boss on one run, and then you come back and you have to fight that same boss again at the end of another day, but you've been upgraded, and now all of a sudden that boss has new stuff, because that happens, so. But overall, I love Omensight. I'm actually excited to see the next game from Spearhead, which is called Project Witchstone, which they're building to attempt to make a perfectly mimicked tabletop experience in a single-player way, so I'm really interested to see that. But if you like what you're seeing, and if the idea of solving a murder through a Groundhog Day repetition with a really fantastic story intrigues you, please by all means pick up Omensight. Seemingly nobody knows about this game, and it is phenomenal. Alright, on to the next game. Hey there, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and a special thank you to all my patrons who are listed over there on the right hand of the screen. If you want to get your name in those credits, feel free to check it out at patreon.com/terminallynerdy. And hey, be kind to each other and stay nerdy. Thanks.